All right, 2 Samuel 11, let's call this one Righteousness and subtitle it Injustice for All. Reminiscent of that part of our American ideal that says America at its best prioritizes justice for all, even though that does not seem to be a genuine priority in practice anymore. But in Israel, as we've already seen, David establishing his kingdom, it is literally the principle upon which Israel was founded, having already seen the way that it literally says. David established justice and equity in some translations and justice and righteousness in others. But this is a chapter with the famous story David and Bathsheba, where we're going to see David sink beneath his ideals and have a lapse in his priorities of maintaining justice for all when his mind is essentially going to be shut down by his desires. And that is one of the things that they will often say in men when we are dealing with lust issues. There is a certain thing about our desire for women that causes our minds to shut down, and things that would otherwise seem off limits all of a sudden become an option. So that's what's going to happen here with David. Even though he has established a certain level of behavior, he is going to allow that to lapse once he lays eyes on Bathsheba. But we're going to see how in this chapter it's going to break down into three things that are really going to displease God. First and foremost is going to be his lapse, as we've already mentioned. But it's also going to be his attempt to cover up what he does in response to his lapse in judgment. And then finally, it is going to be the way in which once he actually sins against Uriah, beyond just sleeping with his wife, but actually having him killed in battle, instead of just making sure she's set up and taken care of in the future, he's actually going to try to take her as his wife. And he's going to do that when during the time he is ordinarily supposed to go out to war, because the chapter is going to say, during the time when kings go out to war. It's probably understandable that David needed a break, understanding all the things he had to deal with in overcoming Saul's attempts on his life. And then finally, having subdued his surrounding enemies. Sometimes you just need a break, but you have to be careful of how you handle the pressures of life during your downtime, because that's one of the things that is frequently emphasized in this chapter. David's lapse in judgment came after a very stressful period of his life. So likewise, when we have been under stress, we probably need to be extra careful, because the thing that David is also going to learn in this chapter is how seriously God takes his command to love the foreigner, because even though Uriah is a Hittite, and the Hittites were one of those 7 nations that God told the people of Israel to completely get rid of. Remember, the Gibeonite deception involved Israel making a covenant with the Gibeonites to spare them, even though they were supposed to be removed from the land. And because Israel extended their word to them, they had to honor their word. And so likewise, Uriah is a Hittite in David's army. And once we get a chance to see Uriah's character, he is going to seem to be a very righteous man. And so when David sleeps with his wife, that's bad enough. But in the cover-up, when David tries to conceal his sin by essentially killing Uriah when he can't persuade Uriah to go sleep with his wife to cover up the fact that David's gotten her pregnant, then that's going to greatly offend God. And so even though God did not punish David during his stay with the Philistines for getting rid of entire towns from those 7 nations that were supposed to be removed from the land of Canaan, we're going to see after this chapter how God is going to devastate David's household in response to the murder of a single foreigner who has shown righteousness and loyalty to David. And in so doing, God reminded David the hard way that when he said he wanted him to establish justice for all, that he meant injustice for all. And one of the ways we're going to see that in the following chapters is a chilling way in which the things that God is going to do to David's household are going to bear an eerie resemblance to the things that David did to Uriah in violating his. Reminding us again of that statement we've probably heard since we were kids from Jesus' ministry. With the measure we use, it will be measured back to us, whether it's for good or tragically for retribution.